Hello again everyone, I am Teacher Glory. This video will again contain a passage reading for grade 12. Have fun! For this video, we will be identifying the author's purpose from the passage that we will cover, and at the same time, explore the meaning of it. Are you ready? Let's now begin. But before doing that, I will show you some pictures. And then, try guessing what will these pictures be. Are you ready? Okay. What is this? Yes, it's an incandescent bulb. How about this? Who is this guy? Do you know him? Yes, he's Thomas Edison. And how are these two related? True again, Thomas Edison discovered the incandescent bulb. Listen and read together with the audio. You can pause the video if you want to listen to it again.
The invention of the incandescent light bulb by Thomas A. Edison in 1879 created a demand for a cheap, readily available fuel with which to generate large amounts of electric power. Coal seemed to fit the bill, and it fueled the earliest power stations, which were set up at the end of the 19th century by Edison himself. As more power plants were constructed throughout the country, the reliance on coal increased. Since the First World War, coal-fired power plants have accounted for about half of the electricity produced in the United States each year. In 1986, such plants had a combined generating capacity of 289,000 megawatts and consumed 33% of the nearly 900 million tons of coal mined in the country that year. Given the uncertainty in the future growth of nuclear power and in the supply of oil and natural gas, coal-fired power plants could well provide up to 70% of the electric power in the United States by the end of the century.
The invention of the incandescent light bulb by Thomas A. Edison in 1879 created a demand for a cheap, meaning inexpensive available fuel with which to generate large amounts of electric power. And the coal seemed to fit the bill here. Since coal seemed to fit the bill here, fit the bill means meets the requirement. Meets the requirement for what? For fuel-generated electric power, which were set up by Edison himself. So, in order to power the light, they used the coal as a fuel. As more power plants were constructed throughout the country, the reliance on coal increased. What country do you think this is? Yes, it is the United States. It is important to take note that the coal-fired power plants in US have accounted for about half of the electricity produced in the country. Accounted for meaning to form a total of something, since half of the US electricity was coal-fired. Let me read this one here. Given the uncertainty, which means not sure, the future growth of nuclear power and in the supply of oil and natural gas, coal-fired power plants could well provide up to 70% of the electric power. This means that the author didn't know the future availability of future growth when we are talking about the nuclear power and the supply of oil and natural gas. As long as it is not sure, coal-fired plants could well provide 70% of the electric power in the US. And again, listen and read together with the audio that I will play. You can pause the video if you want to listen to it again.
Yet, in spite of the fact that coal has long been a source of electricity and may remain one for many years, coal represents about 80% of United States fossil fuel reserves. It has actually never been the most desirable fossil fuel for power plants. Coal contains less energy per unit of weight than natural gas or oil, it is difficult to transport, and it is associated with a host of environmental issues, among them acid rain. Since the late 1960s, problems of emission control and waste disposal have sharply reduced the appeal of coal-fired power plants. The cost of ameliorating these environmental problems, along with the rising cost of building a facility as large and complex as a coal-fired power plant, has also made such plants less attractive from a purely economic perspective.
In spite of the fact that coal has long been a source of electricity, the coal has actually never been the most desirable fossil fuel for power plants. Desirable means worth wanting and having. But what the author is saying here is never been the most desirable. In other words, it is not worth wanting or having. So why undesirable? This time, let's answer the question, why is it undesirable? First, coal contains less energy per unit of weight than natural gas or oil. It is difficult to transport and it is associated with a host of environmental issues. Before we continue describing or explaining what is paragraph 2, let's define these words first: emission, appeal, ameliorating, and perspective. First, emission. Emission is an amount of something, especially of gas, that harms the environment that is sent out into the air. The second one is appeal. Appeal is a request to the public for money, information, or help. And ameliorating is to make a bad or unpleasant situation better. And the last word, perspective. Perspective, to think about a situation or a problem in a wise and reasonable way. There is more in being undesirable of coal-fired power plants. Problems of emission control and the waste disposal have sharply reduced the appeal of these plants. This only means that they made a request or an appeal, but because of the amount of harmful gas that harms the environment, coal-fired power plants has been less attractive, especially from an economic perspective. Since if this would be made good, the cost is much more difficult than building a facility. And again, listen and read together with the audio that I will play. You can pause the video if you want to listen to it again.
Changes in the technological base of coal-fired power plants could restore their attractiveness, however. Whereas some of these changes are evolutionary and are intended mainly to increase the productivity of existing plants, completely new technologies for burning coal cleanly are also being developed.
In the previous paragraph, approving their request would somewhat become difficult. However, it is mentioned in this last paragraph that the attractiveness of coal-fired power plants could be restored if there would be changes in the technological aspect. Although some of these changes are evolutionary and are intended to increase the productivity of existing plants, subsequently, these plants have continued developing of burning coal cleanly to avoid risk of adding damage to the environment. It's time for us to have a quick review. These are the key points that all of you must remember. First, Thomas Edison's electric bulb invention was mentioned because it increases the need for electrical power, especially in the US. Second, the coal became the principal source of electricity in the US because it is cheap. And in the last paragraph, changes in new technology was mentioned in order to make the plants in use more productive. I hope you get all the information you needed for this video. If you have comments about my presentation, feel free to ask. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. See you next time.